What is up, you amazing people? It is Nima here, and today I want to talk about a game that I've been playing for almost a week now. I've finally gotten to a point where I think I can review it, meaning I've played about 80% of the game. I haven't completed it yet, but I do feel like I'm at a good point to talk about it. And I know that sounds a little bit presumptuous to say that I think I'm ready to review it, even though I haven't beaten it, but I must say, I'm not going to even cover that deep into the story, so unless this has some real technical issues at the end of the game, I don't really think that's going to affect my review. Anyway, this is a game called Fuga 3. I hope I'm saying that right. Fuga 3. It is, of course, the third game in the Fuga series. And I'll be honest, this is a series I've wanted to get into for a long time, but just never did. I sort of missed the first game, and then by the time the second game came out, I felt like I had to play the first one to get to the second one, and I just never found the time. So I actually made the time to get into the series, basically starting with the third, and figured, well, if I like it, I can go back. And we'll talk about if it's okay to start with this game, if it helps to be caught up in the story in the series, or if it really doesn't matter, much like a Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest, something like that. But before we get into that, please hit that like and subscribe button, help the channel grow. It means the world to me, and I truly appreciate all of you who have been liking, subscribing, watching, sharing, doing all of that stuff. You have no idea how much that impacts me. Anyways, getting back into the Fuga 3. So to start off, yes, you probably should play the other games, and I say that very tentatively. Now, this game does welcome newcomers by giving you a really good recap of previous games, and anytime a character comes back in Fuga 3, they sort of touch upon where they were from and how they knew them, just briefly, I think just again for the newcomers. But if I'm being honest, some of the story plots in the game, specifically one of the main ones that starts off with, doesn't really hit as hard, being that I'm not really familiar with the characters, and I think that that would make a bigger difference, as well as one of the big mechanics of the game that I'll get to later, where you lose characters, not really meaning that much to me either, because I really didn't have an attachment to those characters. But let's get back to the story in that first main plot. And so essentially this game starts off a few years after the second game, and in those years the children who ran the TARDIS, that like big tank war machine that you see them living in and ultimately operating, anyway, they had decided that this was a problem and maybe one of the main catalysts for war, so they actually ended up dropping it off of their island, and they live up in the clouds, so this was a pretty big fall for the TARDIS. Well, one night Malt wakes up and he can hear something from the cave where they found TARDIS. It's almost like something is calling to him. He goes into that cave, and what does he find? The TARDIS is there again, as well as some other characters who don't have the best intentions for Malt, and in fact they capture him and take him to the Burning Empire. Now, the Burning Empire was basically one of the biggest opponents of the children in their country, if you will, called Gasco, and Burnin is getting ready to do this massive invasion of Gasco, and so they figured the smartest thing to do would be cut the head off the snake, so to speak, and capture Malt. The plan was to use Malt as bait, so to speak, hoping that the children would react very quickly, panicked, and try to save their leader without realizing that they were walking straight into a trap. Well, that's essentially what happened, sort of. The important thing to note, and I don't want to give too much away, is that you do get Malt back eventually. This happens relatively early on in the game, so for any of you that have played the first two and have been curious or worried about Malt, Malt does return with the team, and the team becomes whole as you continue on with a majority of the game. I gotta say, like, maybe an hour or two in, you get Malt back, so it's, for a relatively long game, he's with you for a majority of the time, and I only included that as it might have been a little bit of a spoiler, but in most of the trailers, you see him with the team, so one can guess that his absence would be temporary. And just like the first two games, there are two major mechanics in this game. One involves turn-based combat, and the other one is more of a life sim component, that I think both of these complement each other really well. Meaning, when you starting to get kind of tired of the life sim stuff and the talking and the interacting with other characters and all of that stuff, you can then go into combat where it's a lot more hectic and crazy. But it's nice to know that after that chaos, you're gonna have time to kind of settle down and get to know the characters and explore and talk with them and build relationships. As well as one of my favorite things to do, which was just upgrade the TARDIS. Whether it be from a weapons perspective, upgrading the cannons, machine guns, so on and so forth, or actually some of the stuff that you interacted with on the inside of the TARDIS, like a garden for instance, or even exploring runes, the fishing. There is a ton of different stuff to do, including things like laundry or just going to the restroom. Yes, that is a component of the game. You see, one of the things that you're kind of instructed to do while you're doing the life sim aspect of this game is to fulfill the wishes of the children that are in there. And most of them are like, hey, I'm hungry, or I want to go play with the chickens. Yes, there's chickens. They have like a whole like farm type thing in one little sector. It's not massive, but they have a little chicken coop and a little area to plant different crops, and then you can use those crops and the chicken, or I should say animal byproducts, for cooking and things like that. As well as fishing. There is fishing in this game, which is not nearly as interactive as I think many people would hope it would be. It is more of just a button prompt. You just hit, okay, let me try to fish and let's see what we get. But that it also does in fact yield quite a bit of components that will help you upgrade your weapons. There is also different rune exploring you can do, as well as mining. Now, these things kind of balance back and forth. Like the mining, you just send your characters off and it's all passive. Now, rune exploring, on the other hand, though, which is something I really enjoyed, it takes 3 different characters and you explore these different runes. But the thing is, the main mechanic of exploring these runes is essentially just puzzles, and the puzzles are predicated on what you decide to unlock or move first. It's not that confusing, but so many times I decided to use my resources on the wrong things and was unable to actually get the treasure chest, which is what you're going for. And I just want to be clear, these explorations last about 5 to 10 minutes. It's really not a big deal, but it's just something nice to do on the side, especially while you are doing that like life sim aspect of the game and maybe you want a little bit of action. Now, the other side is a turn-based combat, which is one of my favorites, even though it is essentially just the same as any turn-based combat, but you are using weapons. You have a team that is manning different stations. Now, most of the time, it's either a machine gun, a cannon, or a catapult. And these formations are really important because you really want to pair your team up right. So when I say pair, there will be a formation of, at the beginning, I think it's 6 in total. You have 3 mains and 3 secondaries. And it's important to note that only a main or a secondary can attack. Like, in one turn, your main and secondary can't attack. And when I say main and secondary, it doesn't mean like one is better than the other. I'm just giving them that name because essentially one child will be in charge of like a cannon and the one behind him will be in charge of like a machine gun. And it's important to be able to switch them back and forth because some of your enemies, like the flying ones, are especially evasive against cannons and you're not going to be able to do much damage, but with the machine gun you can take them down quite easily. So you want to have that dynamic as well as just different skills. Sometimes you want to have your healer out there so she can heal or he can heal the team, but then you kind of want to switch them back so you can preserve your healer as well as maybe they're not the right attack. Now, it's important because there isn't a lot of healers in the game, so you really want to make sure that they're safe. As the combat in this game is not easy and you will be heavily relying on your healer, at least I was, especially in like the first half of the game. When you start to get used to some of these aspects like pairing up and creating these teams, you can then like start to synergize better and learn that they play off of each other, and you can actually do a better job of addressing the mains all being somewhat synergistic, and all of this leads to like buffs and debuffs and things that can really help you. But early on in the game, you're not really given a lot of it, so it is just pure power you're going to have to go against and use without any sort of buffs or debuffs. Sure, there's a few in there, and you do have what they call assist teammates that you have that are usually from different armies, that they work sort of like a summon system or a special move. When a gauge builds up, you can use them and it'll give you a buff or give the enemies a debuff while also doing a little bit of an attack. But none of these things are major early on, so again, you are kind of relying on just keeping your HP up while trying to do the most damage. And I know that sounds like any other RPG or any other game, but I'm just saying without being able to rely on any support skills or debuffs, buffs, heals, stuff like that. As the game goes on, you get different skills that really start to help, things like a regen and things of that nature. But I will say though, this in turn kind of leads to my biggest complaint about the game, and it does happen during the turn-based combat aspect, and it is something called the Mega Soul Cannon. Now this works as sort of like a clock. Essentially, as the battles go on, some of the children will start to get anxious or worried that this could be it. Their whole team could be wiped out, and there's one thing that they can do, and that is to use the Mega Soul Cannon. This is a weapon that will completely destroy the enemy. One hit, one kill. It is a massive amount of damage, which sounds awesome, right? Well, except for the fact that the child that is freaking out and decides to use it is also sacrificing their life. And to make it even more interesting, you don't really know which child it is that is freaking out. You'll just get like some messages with a blacked out character that is panicking and having these thoughts about, oh no, we're gonna lose, my whole team's gonna die, I have to do something, and then they do it. And my big issue with this is, this would happen to me often when my HP was actually fine and the team was doing okay. Like, there wasn't a lot of things, it was just on a longer fight. And so it kind of implements this clock into the game that I don't really love. And just to be clear, this normally only happens in boss fights, and one of my biggest complaints about it is it doesn't seem to matter what is happening. Like, one of the last times it happened to me, the boss only had like maybe 10% of its health left, and I was sitting there at over 50% of mine, and we still had like a lot of skills abilities, so we could heal, we could do whatever. Like, we weren't in a bad spot. I figured, oh, we're about to win. And I did see that this character was going off and freaking out, but I figured, okay, well, now that our health is up, we're about to beat the enemy, then they'll calm down, but they didn't. And again, this is something that for me happened far more early on in the game. Later on there becomes ways to mitigate it, but it just was really annoying. Like, if you want to use that as like a last ditch effort, like you're almost out of health, the enemy seems to be unbeatable, okay, cool, but don't do that when I'm winning the fight and it's almost over. It just seems ridiculous. And in some ways, I actually thought that this was something that was just programmed into the game, because I had tried to like stop it right after it happened so I could save that character and go back and redo the battle, but the game saves right when it happens, so there's no going back. But that was really my only big complaint with the game so far. Everything else has been amazing. I love the story writing, I love the dialogue, I even grew an attachment to the characters relatively quickly. And aside from the Mega Soul Cannon, I really love the combat, a turn-based, gun-heavy combat, if you will, almost like more militaristic. Think Front Mission or Valkyria Chronicles, any of those type of games, I just enjoy. Again, outside of the Mega Soul Cannon aspect of it, I really do enjoy it. I really enjoyed the visuals, the character design, all of that. Music is great too, and by the way, there is a jukebox where you can change what songs you listen to, which is really cool. There's a ton to this game that I really find interesting and really got addicted to. It became one of those games I just wanted to keep playing. And so for me, ultimately, I would give this game like an 8 out of 10, maybe even an 8.5. It's just one of those games that has so much content that is well thought out. I mean, it's one thing to just throw a bunch of stuff together and call it extra content, but it's another to have a bunch of different options that are more thought out and more complex. And that's all I'm saying. There was times where I really just wanted to get into combat, then other times where I really wanted to just upgrade the Tarnus and do a bunch of stuff like that. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it, but let me know what your thoughts are. Again, I think this is one of those games that it would help to play the other ones, but you don't have to. For me, I do feel like I lost a little bit of something by not playing the other ones, but honestly, it was a time component. It's something that I just don't think I would ever have the time to play all of those games, so I'm glad I picked it up and gave it a shot. Anyway, let me know what your thoughts are down below. Let me know, is this a series you're familiar with? Are you interested in this game? Are you playing this game now? Is it one you passed on? Is it a series you played and just didn't really like? Or is it a series you love? Anything and everything down in the comment section is much appreciated. I love each and every one of you. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. Did I call that thing the TARDIS the entire time?